Welcome to Kids Recall. In today's video, we'll be going through the 1999 movie The Iron Giant. It's time to recall. Let's get started. Turn on subtitles and spoilers ahead. The movie begins and we see a sailor who's stuck in the sea and goes on to ask for help from the control room. He then goes on to spot a very strong light that's moving from the sky to the earth. He's shocked to see this and ends up losing control of his boat. He looks around and spots a big robot. The scene changes to morning time and a boy named Hogarth is on his way to school. He's around 9 years old and is on his bicycle. We learn that he lives with his mother because his father used to be a pilot in the military who died during the Korean War. We see Hogarth catching a squirrel and he takes it to his mother while she is on her job at a restaurant asking her permission as he wants to keep the animal as a pet. His mother, however, goes on to tell him that he should get rid of it right away. When he's about to take it out of there, the squirrel goes on to sneak out of his hands and gets into the pants of a man named Dean. The man gets pissed off at this and goes on to scold Hogarth for bringing a squirrel into a restaurant. The squirrel then goes on to make a lot of mess, and Hogarth leaves the restaurant right away. When he's alone at home in the evening, his mother goes on to call him and tells him that she's going to be late from the office that evening and that he should take care of himself. That night, when he's at home alone watching TV, the signal goes out. He goes up on the rooftop to take a look at the antenna, and when he looks around, he sees that all the wires have been broken. He then picks up his gun and makes his way out of the house and goes out to see what's going on out there. He looks around but spots no one out there. And just as he's about to leave, he goes on to follow a trail of the forest destruction and frees the robot, which is stuck in the power cables of an electrical substation. The power in the whole town is out after this incident. The robot is now out cold on the ground. On the other hand, Hogarth's mother is really worried when she gets home and doesn't find her son. She looks for him everywhere, but he is of course nowhere near to be found. In the meantime, Hogarth stands beside the giant robot, and when the big thing opens its eyes, Hogarth gets scared and starts running towards his home. He sees his mother approaching him. The woman is relieved to see her son unharmed and goes on to give a scolding for going out of the house at this hour. When he tries to tell his mother what he saw out there, she tells him to go home right away, without even trying to listen to what he's trying to tell her. The next day, the two men go on to report strange activities happening in their town because the whole bonnet of their truck is missing, and it is really unusual for them. On top of that, they're both scared and shocked because it seems like half of the truck has been eaten by a giant creature. An officer makes his way to the scene of the crime, and when he looks at the truck, he goes on to say that it seems to be the work of a giant creature. As he searches the area, he goes on to find Hogarth's gun out there as well. The officer's name is Kent, and when Kent makes his way back to his car is in the same condition, as it seems like it too has been eaten by a giant creature. On the other hand, Hogarth makes his way to the jungle yet again, trying to look for the robot. Last night, he had seen that the robot eating metal. The boy takes a lot of metal for him as he tries to find him in the area he last saw. He also takes a camera so that he appears. Hogarth could take a picture to show to anyone who would not believe his story. Hogarth waits for the robot for a long time, but it still doesn't show up. Hogarth starts getting bored and sleeps. He ends up falling asleep alongside a tree, and when he wakes up, he realizes that the metal he brought with him to lure out the robot is missing. He now knows that the robot did not come there and that it must be around here somewhere. When Hogarth looks behind, he sees the giant robot towering over his head. As he looks at the humongous robot, he gets scared yet again and starts running towards his home. He runs madly and ends up bumping into a tree and falling down. The robot then comes close to him but does not do anything to the boy. Hogarth now realizes that the robot is not going to hurt him. He thinks that the robot must remember him from last night, as he's the one who saved him. Hogarth tries to talk to the big thing, but he's unable to understand anything the boy says. When it's not able to get it, the robot starts mimicking whatever Hogarth says, and the boy then goes on to teach the robot many things that the robot understands right away. Hogarth goes on to tell the creature that if the people of the town found out that the giant robot was among them, they were going to get scared, and they could very much finish off the robot. So Hogarth decides he's not going to tell anybody, adding that the big thing should keep living in the forest, as if it makes his way into town, people are gonna spot it. As Hogarth walks towards his home, the robot keeps following him, and the boy keeps telling him not to follow him, trying to make the robot aware of the danger of going into town. But the big thing does not listen and keeps on following. As they walk on, they come across a railway track, and the giant attempts to eat the rails off the ties of the nearby railroad tracks. Alarmed by the sound of an oncoming train, Hogarth tells the giant to repair the tracks. The giant attempts this, but it takes too long, causing the train to collide with his head. The robot gets badly hurt, and the boy goes on to blame himself for that. But as he looks on, he realizes that the giant has the ability to repair himself, as it takes care of the dents in its body and stands up again. Hogarth then goes on to hide the creature in his barn. On the other hand, the officer named Kent is at the station, and he's in a meeting with the other officers, where they talk about the destructive incidents taking place in their town. Kent goes on to say that a few days ago, when something fell from the sky, they all thought it was a meteoroid, but he's now positive it was not that. It was something else, and it seems to be of a destructive nature from the way it's been moving around and destroying things in town. This is when Kent gets the news of the rail incident, and he goes right up there. He inspects the area and is shocked again to see how powerful this thing must be. He talks to a man nearby who goes on to tell him that he saw a giant metal robot, and the train collided with the giant. Hogarth has to report it back to his supervisors, but he left his phone back at the station. He then sees Hogarth's house right there. Kent knocks on the door, and Hogarth right away tries to hide the big creature. He tries to hide it in his barn, but it barely fits in there. Hogarth tells him that he's going to have to make do with that, because Hogarth has no other place to hide him. In the meantime, his mother comes home and goes straight to the kitchen and calls Hogarth to dinner. When Hogarth tries to go inside the house, the robot follows him, but the boy tells him to stay back inside the barn. When Hogarth is finally at the dinner table, he sees the robot's hand inside his house and pushes it out, telling him to stay back or they'll get caught. And this is when Officer Kent walks into their house. He asks Hogarth's mother permission to use the phone, and when he tells his superiors about the giant robot, they don't believe his words at all and tell him he should stop making up stories. Kent gets upset and hangs up, and Kent is really angry. And when he's on his way back home, he takes a look at Hogarth's gun, which he found in the woods. He sees that Hogarth's name has been carved into the gun and gets excited because he's now sure that Hogarth must know something about the giant robot. He goes back to Hogarth and goes on to ask the boy if he noticed anything unusual. This is when a loud noise is heard, which seems to be coming from the second floor of the house. The officer also gets suspicious, but doesn't say anything. Hogarth goes upstairs to see what's going on and sees the robot trying to get inside the room through the window, but only his hand can barely come inside through that window. Hogarth pushes his hand out of the room and tells the big thing to stay back. On the other hand, Kent says goodbye to Hogarth's mother and hits the road again. He still doesn't believe what Hogarth told him and still thinks that there's something going on. Later that night, Hogarth returns to the barn with a stack of comic books to read to the giant. The giant's impressed with Superman, but distressed when he discovers a comic about an evil robot. Hogarth tells the giant that he can be who he chooses to be. Investigating the destroyed substation, U.S. government agent Kent discovers evidence of the giant and goes on to continue his inquiries in nearby Rockwell. On the other hand, as Hogarth hangs out with the robot starts to get hungry and says that he needs metal right away. Hogarth doesn't have any spare metal around his house, so he decides to take the giant to the forest and try to find some metal for him. When they spot an old car, the robot is just about to pick it up and eat it, when Dean shows up and drives away from the car. Hogarth sees that it is the metal artist Dean, so along with the robot, he goes on to follow the man, because Hogarth is aware that Dean makes a lot of things using metal. So he must have a lot of it at his place. They pick up a lot of metal and go into the forest to eat it. The giant eats a lot of metal, and he's about to eat a car. The horn starts ringing, and the robot gets annoyed and throws the car right into Dean's house. Hogarth tells the robot to hide while he himself goes to talk to Dean. When Hogarth sees the inside of his house, he sees that it's full of scraps. Dean's an artist and who makes new things out of scraps. Dean often goes to the restaurant where Hogarth's mother works, so he knows Hogarth as well. Just as the two are talking, Dean hears a loud noise coming from outside. He says that he's going to check what's going on out there, but the boy tells him to let it go. Dean does not stop, and when he goes out, he's shocked to see the giant robot out there. Kent, on the other hand, still suspects Hogarth, so he takes up a room for rent at Hogarth's home and trails the boy to learn more. He's paranoid about an alien invasion and alerts the U.S. Army to the possible presence of the giant. Worried that they will get caught, Hogarth evades Mansley and takes the giant to beatnik artist Dean McCoppin, who passes off the robot as one of his works of scrap metal art. When Mansley and Lieutenant General Rogard investigate, once Mansley and Rogard are gone, Hogarth plays with the giant by using a toy gun, but inadvertently causes the giant to activate a defense mechanism. Dean saves Hogarth and angrily commands the giant to leave, but Hogarth, believing the giant never meant to harm him, gives chase. Dean sees the toy gun and realizes that the giant was reacting defensively against the gun. He catches up with Hogarth on his motorbike, and they chase after the giant before he can reach the town. The giant saves two boys from falling from a roof when he arrives, winning over the townspeople. Mansley spots the giant in the town while leaving Rockwell and has the army attack the giant after he has picked up Hogarth, forcing the two to flee together. They initially evade the military by using the giant's flight system, but the giant is shot down and crashes to the ground. Hogarth is knocked unconscious, but the giant gives in to his defensive system in a fit of rage and grief, transforming into a war machine and returning to Rockwell. Mansley convinces Rogard, a superior, to prepare a nuclear missile launch from the military base, as conventional weapons prove to be ineffective. Hogarth awakens and returns in time to calm the giant, while Dean clarifies the situation to Rogard. Rogard is ready to stand down and order the Nautilus to deactivate its primed nuke, but a panicked Mansley impulsively orders the missile launch, causing the missile to head towards Rockwell, where it will destroy the town upon impact in the resulting nuclear detonation. Mansley tries escaping after being lectured by Rogard, but the giant intervenes and Rogard has Mansley arrested. To save the town, the giant bids farewell to Hogarth and flies off to intercept the missile. As he soars directly into the missile's path, the giant remembers Hogarth's words, "You are who you choose to be," smiles contentedly and says, "Superman!" as he collides with the weapon. The missile explodes in the atmosphere, saving Rockwell, its population, and the military forces nearby, while the giant is presumably destroyed, leaving Hogarth, Dean, Annie, and Rogard devastated. Months later, a memorial of the giant stands in Rockwell. Dean and Annie begin a relationship. Hogarth is given a package from Rogard containing a screw from the giant, which is the only remnant found. That night, Hogarth finds the screw trying to move on its own, and remembering the giant's ability to self-repair, happily allows the screw to leave. The screw joins many other parts as they converge on the giant's head, and the giant smiles as he begins reassembling himself. And with that, the movie comes to an end. Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on the notification bell and leave a like to help the channel out. And thank you for watching.